Yes, it's time to finish our placemats. So it's finishing week. Finish up this project and yeah, let's get going. This is my favorite part of weaving. Da, da, da. Isn't that beautiful? So now we're going to cut it off. I always cut it on the outside of my apron rod. And yeah, this is always so exciting, taking it off the loom. And I really like using cloth as well when I take it off. I find that it cuts off easier for some reason for me using that cloth for the initial take up to, you know, how you make your warp even before you start weaving your pattern. So there it is off the loom. I love looking at the loom and just the colors of the strings left over too. That's always just a pretty side note of weaving. Now, the next step is we're going to sew the edges so that they are set and they're locked. Then we're going to wash it. Then we're going to cut them and make our placemat. So we still have a couple of more steps to go. But this is pretty good. I did it for 2 and some extra. But this would be 4 placemats. That's too small, I think. So yeah, we'll see what it has. Now I always weave extra because, I don't know, I just do. So let's get our sewing machine out and sew up the edges and get ready to wash these guys. These are my choices on my sewing machine. And when you're doing the edges of any weaving, you just want to make sure there's a zigzag so it's locked. I usually use number 17, but you can also use 41 or 20 because all of those have that zigzag. Actually, 17 and 20 would be best. The best would be a serger, which I don't have. So if you have a serger, use that instead. The outer edges are sewn and these are washed. First thing I'm going to do is measure out 19 inches because I wanted my placemat 18 inches and that gives me a ½ inch on each side to double over. So I'm going to measure out 19 inches and then I'm going to tape it off. So I have a piece of tape showing me where 19 inches is and then I check it, you know, 3 parts of the way through to make sure that tape is straight because I've done this before. My tape's crooked. So after my tape is straight and I have my 19 inches, I'm going to use that tape as a guide to sew a seam between my 2 placemats, locking the edges in because remember I'm using that zigzag pattern. And after I sew that first seam, I'm going to take the tape off and use that first seam as a guide for you to sew a second seam parallel to the first. So you'll have 2 interlocking seams side by side down the middle of your weave, and then you can cut between the 2 seams and that will give you your 2 placemats. On we go with our placemat project. Here is the finished woven placemat. I sewed both of the sides with that crisscross stitch, and this is what the placemat looks like. I wish it was a little bit wider, but that's okay. So now I need to finish off the edges. The next thing I want to do is I want to put some pom-poms on one side. And then I have to tuck in the sides and finish them off so they're not frayy. I went and bought an iron because I tried to do it without an iron and it's just, yeah, it's not working. Also, another thing I wanted to point out is if you look especially on this side, even though this is sewn straight on the weave, on the pattern this side, can you even see that? Here, let me do. Although this is sewn straight on the pattern, it's bowing in, and that's the tension. You can tell I had my tension all messed up on this thing. You can see, like, if this is the straight edge line, of course, and you can see it's bowing in. See how much is here? It's like 1/4 of an inch, and here it's like more 1/8 of an inch. So that's my tension not being right. That's what happens when your tension's not right. That's why tension's so important in weaving. And obviously I still struggle with it, but you know, we'll move on. I still enjoy it. And that's why I do it, to get better. But I do love the pattern. I think it turned out nice. So let's move on. Back to straightening out my messed up tension edge. I just got a straight edge and I'm actually just using a crayon because that's what I have. It's probably not the best choice, but that's what I have on hand. And so I'm using a crayon to mark it so I know what straight looks like on this thing. And then I'll use that as a guide to fold it over to make sure my finished product's nice and straight. So I'm just ironing it on the red line, trying to get it as straight as possible. Remember, this side over here is wonky because of my tension. And then it's just stitch up each side. And when you are sewing hand-woven fabrics, it's very important to emphasize, which I've learned this lesson way too many times, to really be sure don't pull it through, because if it's sewn with the fiber stretched, it will just be a weird, awkward look. Yeah, so be careful when you're feeding it through your footer that you're not pulling it through. So if you notice, I now keep my hands in the front of it, but I'm used to having a hand in the front and back, like when I sew clothes or whatnot. So anyway, sew up the side of the seams. Take it to the edge, and when you get at the edge, do your back stitch and hold it. And now we're going to put our pom-poms on. One last check of measurement to make sure that things are straight. And we're going to sew our pom-poms to the edge. Now the first thing I'm going to do is get some pins and pin it to make sure that when I sew it, it doesn't move. And so I pin the pins, and then I am ready to get my sewing machine out. So again, it's just a straight top stitch down the side. I have the pom-poms coming off the edge, and yeah, I do the same thing to the other placemat, attaching the pom-poms. And when you attach these pom-poms, they come with a little like ribbon that makes it really easy to sew them on. So I do the exact same thing for my second placemat, and remember to backstitch as always. And one last quick pressing of both my placemats, and voila, there they are, done. I like how they turned out. I had great fun weaving these placemats and sharing my method of weaving these lovely overshot patterns. If you would like to weave some more with me, check me out at my Patreon page, patreon.com/warp2work-in-progress, or I'm on Instagram at warp2work-in-progress. And of course, you can catch me on my website, warp2work-in-progress.com. So yeah, I had great fun, and I hope to weave with you some more in the future. So until next time, thanks. Bye.